If I talked about how many times Stacey mentions how calming Izzy is, it really should be a drinking game at this point. We should be taking shots. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about something a little different. We're talking about Love is Blind. And it's really just to break up the crime. So don't fret, crime will be back, but I'm not going to recap the previous ones. This one's only going to talk about episode 8 and 9. I'm not going to review the past ones. I'm just going to kind of jump on in. Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe, do your thing and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, stick around. So I basically watched these and typed out my thoughts as I went through. So I'm going to go through each section, provide my opinion based on the parts of the episodes that I found important. But basically my opinions that I wrote down are from how I felt going through the episode. When the episode starts for episode 8, it is piggybacking off of the conversation that Uche and Milton were having when the episode ended, when Lydia storms off, but she's trying to get Milton to come, and Milton and Uche are having a conversation, and Uche is trying to warn Milton. But as their conversation is starting, it shifts over to a group setting, and Uche talking to the girls and boys that were part of the pod. That includes like Stacey, I think it's Miriam is her name. He is going to tell them everything that he told Milton. I'm going to just kind of jump in and talk about the Uche and Milton conversation, and then I'll talk about this group setting where stuff got a little heated. In so many words, is trying to warn Milton about how crazy Lydia is and some of the things that she did in their relationship, things that he found out after the relationship, and to tell him to be careful. Not that he shouldn't tell Milton. There were some things that happened in our relationship. I definitely would be careful, just keep my eyes and ears open, make sure that she's the right person for you. But the way he's painting Lydia out to be, I still think kind of makes him look bad too. I might be thinking Uche is full of himself, and he definitely likes to make himself out to be the good guy, but he's not giving good guy intentions. And his intentions when talking to Milton is to definitely try to ruin their relationship and to have Milton second guess it, because I think that he's upset that him and Aaliyah didn't work out. So he wants to do what was done to him, and he wants Milton to run. It was all fine and dandy when he had Aaliyah, but now that he doesn't, and he feels like Lydia did him dirty, he's going to do it back. Two wrongs don't make it right. He's telling Milton that he has receipts from women that have told him that Lydia was stalking his Instagram, did a drive by his house. Driving by your house, not a great look, Lydia. Not a great look. But stalking people on Instagram, seeing what your ex is up to, maybe seeing the girls that they're hanging out with, girls tend to go down rabbit holes. She wouldn't be the first person that I knew that did that. My friends have definitely done that, and they're, in my opinion, not nutso and crazy. I think that in the world of social media and having that access to be able to peek into somebody's lives, it's sometimes hard not to do that, and it might come off stalkerish, but there's worse things that this girl could be doing to be deemed a stalker. But he also goes on to tell Milton that he knows that she went on the show because she's so obsessed with him and she wanted them to work out so badly that she applied for Love is Blind because she wanted them to end up together. That was something that Aaliyah heard from Lydia, but we don't really know all of this to be true. It could be, but also keep in mind that Lydia could get there and change her mind too. Milton kind of brushes Uche off. Milton saying everyone's perception is their reality. So you might be perceiving things a certain way, and that might be your reality, but that might not be others' perception, my perception, her perception. You are not the only person that has a perception, and it may not be the truth. It might be your reality, but it may not be mine. Uche says, how would you want somebody that is going to walk off in heated conversations and not know how to talk to you? And Milton goes, that doesn't happen in our relationship. I think what Uche has to remember is that she doesn't have to talk to him. Not each relationship is going to be the same every single time. everybody's different. And that relationship will not be the same as Uche and Lydia's before. Their relationship will be different. I can tell Milton doesn't really care what he has to say. Milton's going to make his own choice no matter what. But Uche, of course, wants to then go to the group setting and tell everybody, like, guess what, guys? I mean, he wants everybody to know. But we all know this is all going to come out anyways because it was mentioned to him through Aaliyah. So I just think he's looking bad by just going around and telling everyone his story. Like, he wants everything to be known, and he really wants Lydia to own up to it and provide some clarity, basically take ownership for ruining his relationship. Honestly, it's really not all Lydia's fault. If somebody wants to do something, they're going to do it. Lydia should not have been able to stop it. But he wants to tell the group, like, bros, girls, I'm telling you, I've got a big secret that none of y'all know about. Johnny's face gets wide. Stacy looks over at Johnny like, what the F does this girl have to say? You can just feel the tension. Stacy, she's like, what's that face for? Like, that's what she says to Johnny. And Johnny's like really tipsy. You can tell actually in this episode, she's feeling it. And Uche goes, so Lydia knew that I was going on the show, and that's why she applied. She basically applied to ruin my life, ruin my relationship, ruin anything I had if I didn't pick her. Like, there was no possibility that Lydia could like anybody but him. From my perception, Lydia liked about a couple people other than you, Uche and the Pods. I think Lydia kind of falls hard, loves love, and I think she, unfortunately, can love a lot of people. I think that she loves the idea of being in love, having a family, getting married, having kids, which may be her downfall because she's emotionally invested, I think. Once she's in, man, she's just it. But of course, Stacy wants to defend Lydia. Like, if somebody is trying to ruin you and Aaliyah's relationship, Lydia was over there comforting her, not talking extremely negatively about you. But then Uche's trying to hear what Stacy has to say, and this girl on the right just like darts in and starts talking too. And you can tell Uche's getting like, I'm getting bombarded. I just want to hear Stacy's point of view. I don't want to hear everybody's point of view right now. I can't even hear everyone's point of view. And I understand where Uche's coming from. Like, sometimes girls just interject and everybody can't speak at once and have their opinions voiced at once. So I do think they should have given him a little bit more grace. But man, that girl, the right, I think her name is Miriam, she went in. Because he started getting up to walk away, saying, like, I just want to hear Stacey's opinion. And I agree. I kind of wanted to hear Stacey's opinion too. But she's like, okay, yeah, walk away, you toxic masculinity. Like, you can't say it to my face. Well, believe me, he turns around and says what he thinks to her face. He had no problem doing that, and she did ask for it. Now, was he in the right, how he emotionally approached the situation? No. Do I think that she should have interjected and not let the conversation eventually lead to her and what she thought? She should have waited to speak. I mean, sometimes just simmer down. Not everyone has to speak at once. Milton doesn't really care what Uche has to say. He didn't want to see his receipts, and he eventually leaves with Lydia anyways. So Uche just, I think, kind of like made himself look like an ass. So moving on to Stacy and Johnny's situation, I feel like they've been going hard on Johnny in this episode. Johnny owned up to so much that she didn't have to. That makes Izzy feel better as a person. I mean, she was really feeding into his ego by saying, like, you were my number one. I really liked you. I got rejected by you. And when that happened, I, want to find love. So that's why I went to Chris, and it worked out finally. And we met up, and we've had to figure out a way to move past it because he was my second choice. To say the things that she said in what we were given in these episodes, I think takes a lot of courage to say. And Izzy just goes, well, I think you're sketchy. And just basically was like, everyone thinks you're sketchy. That's really rude to say that everybody. Like, I hate when people encompass everybody, because what if everyone doesn't feel the same way you and Stacy feel, Izzy? The biggest question we have to ask Izzy is, why does he care? Why do you care about making sure Chris knows the type of person that Johnny is? Why is that so important? Since Izzy was talking to Chris and Stacy walked over, I think Stacy felt like compelled to say what she thought. Stacy and Izzy bombarding Chris with their thoughts on Johnny, I would be thinking in my head, like, why does it matter now? You have Stacy. Let me figure out how I feel about Johnny. Does it matter? Izzy, you already told me a lot of things that happened in the pods. Moving on past that, Johnny eventually comes over because she feels like they're having a heated conversation, and she's very much aware that they're probably talking about her. And she sits down next to Chris and is basically defending herself as Izzy's saying, like, she told me that she was in love with me 4 times, like, congrats, you counted. She told me that I was the one, congrats, awesome. And that she kept telling me repeatedly that she wanted to date me and that we were dating, basically making Chris feel bad. I mean, he's currently in a relationship with Johnny, and all you're doing is repeating what happened in the pods. Like, nothing could change or be different now. Like, she couldn't maybe be in love with Chris now. She couldn't maybe be dating him, because she is. Like, she couldn't move on past you, Izzy. She just is that in love with you that, like, everything that she's doing with you, Chris, is just a lie. Izzy, you don't know how she feels. I think Izzy looked not great in that part of the episode, and I think he was also very much intoxicated too. But I think Stacy hated Johnny from the start. I think they were in competition in the pods. I think Johnny said some negative things about Stacy that probably she heard, and I think Stacy's opinion about Johnny was never going to be great. After this barbecue reunion, they head back to their houses, but they show Izzy and Stacy talking. And Stacy brings up a good point. Like, why do you care to inform Chris of what you think about Johnny? Like, why does that matter? You should be focused on me, like winning me over. I don't want these situations to happen and then you tell me how wonderful I am and then compare me to something else. Like, I just want it to be about us. Stacy's right. Why does he have to tell Chris? And then Izzy says some things that I think are very true to Stacy. Izzy tells Stacy that he doesn't feel like he's good enough for her. And in all honesty, I kind of thought the same thing. I mean, her expectation is pretty high and he's going to have to do a lot to live up to it. She has an expectation of herself and the people in her life. And I feel like if you don't reach a lot of those expectations or you don't keep up, she's not going to be one to be like, oh, babe, you did a really great job at this day. Oh, babe, thank you so much for doing this. No, she's keeping tally marks in her head of what you're doing and what you're not doing. And she's probably going to mention more of what you're not doing than what you are doing. She's not going to validate you that much because she has set a standard for herself that she doesn't feel like needs to be validated. I mean, she literally jumps off the counter after that conversation and says, I don't need to change anything about myself. I know what I'm putting in the relationship. Now he needs to put more into it. She's not really thinking about his feelings and maybe why he would be feeling not good enough and how to make him feel better. She was like, no, I was told you were this type of person in the pods, that you were going to cook this amount during the week. You haven't cooked for me at all, but I've cooked for you. I've went out of my way to do things for you. Her expectation was that you were going to be like this immediately out of the pods. So she feels like you're not bringing enough to the table, and Izzy might have to man up and realize that might not change. It shouldn't be about keeping these tally marks of who did more and who did another. No, you all should always be reaching to make each other's life easier if you can. I think Izzy hears her enough to go to her job and talk it out because they didn't have a good night after all of this happened. Bring her a gift, show that he is listening to her, and to also tell her like what he needs and that he heard her and he is going to try to do better at bringing to the table what he said he would in their marriage from the start. Izzy's mom does get to meet Stacy. Izzy's mom seems to really think that they have a great relationship. I can tell that she says, I think Stacy is in love with my son. I can see that she's genuine and that the relationship they have is real and that she can see how in love Izzy is. And I think that a mom seeing how in love their son is with their partner, it matters, because people that are genuinely in love with each other and are willing to fight for it are in a good spot, but both parties have to be there. They have to be willing to fight. And Izzy does mention that I think girls from his past maybe walked out of the relationship or walked away from it. They never found a way to stick it out and get through the hard times. And he says that Stacey's really good about that. I think the biggest thing for Stacey is that Izzy's brought out an emotional, vulnerable side to her. And I think she's got a hard shell. She might be squishy on the inside, but she comes off very hard. And that also validates why she thinks he's the one. All right. So at the end of this episode, Lydia does get to meet Milton's mom. And I really thought this one was going to be not so great. And I think it's because we all both can attest that, like, Milton is on the younger side. I don't think that should discredit the fact that he might not be in love with Lydia, or, you know, he shouldn't get married, because I can't say anything. My husband got married at 22, 23, 24 maybe. And I was like 27. I mean, my husband was young. Gosh, I gotta think about this. Shit, I forgot. Yeah, so my husband was 24 when we got married. So same age as Milton, and I was 4.5 years older than him. I was worried that Hagen wouldn't be ready for marriage, but we're still together almost. We're almost 6 years into our marriage. I'd be a hypocrite, so I'm not going to talk about his age because I can't validate that. Because some people do get married young. But I understand why Milton's family would have some reservations about him getting married. There are still some things that he wants to do. His mom says that, like he still wants to receive more education, and is she for that? Lydia is having all the right answers, and I think that is making her come off disingenuous and making Milton's sister think that it's all phony, like their whole relationship's fake. It's hard because Milton is young, that Lydia does at least bring up some things that have bothered her. Like, Milton's not a clean freak. He leaves his stuff everywhere. But that he treats her amazing, and that's what makes her fall in love with him. And that he's the more level-headed one in a lot of ways. But that she has grown at 30, and last year she couldn't have gotten married, but this year she can get married. But I am getting the sense that Milton is stubborn and takes things that people say in one ear and out the other. People are not going to get in his head, whether he likes it or not. You can kind of tell. And his sister has reservations and is skeptical of their whole relationship. She definitely tells Lydia, like, I think some of your answers were too well thought out and said. And I don't know if I believe that you and Milton are the right people for each other. And that marriage is a business transaction. So you really got to think it through, because you enter it, it is difficult to get out of it, and it costs some money to get out of it. So you better be sure. All right, so we're moving on to episode 9. It starts off as a couple, they're getting their marriage license. I'm sure they have to do all of these steps because of the show. And then they head on to pick out their wedding dresses and their tuxes. Nick and Vanessa are asking how the couples are feeling. So Vanessa's asking Stacey's mom, like, how do you feel about Izzy? And everyone is talking about how Stacey probably would have never gotten married if it hadn't been for this experiment, because she could write off a guy for like the littlest thing. But this experiment made her become emotionally involved, and it wasn't about how they looked or what they had, because she couldn't see that, but she had to dig deep. And it seems like Stacey's mom thinks that this experiment brought her to marriage, and without it, it wouldn't have, because they didn't really think she'd get married, which I could kind of see why maybe people didn't think Stacey would get married. And then we go on to Vanessa asking Lydia's family, like, what do you think of Milton? And they're like, oh, he's already a part of the family, and we love him, and I can see the love and connection between them. But Lydia's mom does have a little bit of a language barrier. So they pick out their dresses, look beautiful. It's a very exciting moment for them. And then, you know, Nick is asking Izzy and Milton, like, how they're feeling. Izzy seems genuine in his response, like super excited and ready to just get a move on. Like, he seems like he's going to say yes to Stacey at this point in time. Milton then describes why he loves Lydia. Milton speaks really great about Lydia, but he does mention that she is emotional and that there's never a dull moment with her. And he says, like, I'm nervous that she won't say yes because I really don't know how it will go. But in this conversation, it does seem like Milton is all on board. Like, he's going to say yes in this conversation that he's having with the camera. Like, he loves that it's not boring. He loves that she is authentically herself. So we go on to their last dates, which we all know. I think the date between Izzy and Stacy was great. They go to an executive airport. He takes her on a private flight, probably around Houston, and then they end up having dinner in that executive airport. It was really romantic, really sweet. You could tell Stacy was over the moon. And when he said, like, I have to treat her first class all the time, I think you do. I think you're going to have to put in your work for Stacy for life. My mindset on them two has a little bit shifted by this time. Like, episode 8, I'm thinking, Izzy, are you in love with Johnny? Or are you in love with Stacy? And Stacy, like, are you in love with Izzy? Is Izzy going to be good enough for you? But in that date moment, I'm thinking, okay, they might say yes. Then the next part of the episode goes into Stacy confronting Izzy about his financial debt, because she had asked him about why he couldn't get a credit card, and he dismissed it. I think the reason why Izzy dismissed it is because he didn't want to tell her that I can't get credit cards, I've been in debt before, and I can't apply for them, I was negligent with them. And I think that says something, because Izzy not telling her should make Stacy a little bit worried, in the sense that, like, she is marrying this guy. She's marrying his debt. You got to know what you're marrying into. It matters. It matters. And luckily, Stacy has a lot of things that she's accomplished. She owns her own home. But if she didn't, it would matter. They'd have to both be able to have a good line of credit, get a home, get a car. Like, Stacy probably doesn't want to have you piggybacking off of her. It is important that she knows that. And he says, well, I was just waiting for the right moment. I wanted to do this face to face. I wanted to explain myself. I didn't want to just jump into it. I think that you were avoiding it, Izzy. I think you were embarrassed by it. You didn't want to tell her. Let's be honest. If you weren't, you would have just flat out told her the truth from the start. She wouldn't have had to pry it out of you. But the ending of this episode goes into the last date for Milton and Lydia. Their date does not go well. No. It's not going well. Milton is discussing how their way of arguing is different. And it's all kind of brought up because Lydia goes, you told me you were kind of a clean freak or that you were clean in the pods, but in reality, you leave food and plates like on the couch. You leave your socks everywhere. Basically, you're messy, and I've let them stay there for 2 days at a time just to see if you pick them up. And you told me, well, I knew you'd eventually pick them up. Well, if you know that, you should pick them up, Milton. Then Milton kind of brings up their arguing styles and brings up how Lydia walked away from Uche and how she emotionally handled it. He would have never handled it like that, and that they're just different. And that he feels he can't sometimes tell Lydia how he feels about certain situations if he has not thought out in detail how he's going to present it to Lydia, because he doesn't know if he provides his opinion or gives her any input, how she'll take it. And that's not good. You shouldn't be afraid to provide your opinion. Now, should you think some of the things that you're going to say through? Yes, but you shouldn't avoid telling them something because you're so afraid of how they're going to take it. That's not good, that Lydia can't take sometimes criticism from Milton's point of view, because we need to grow as people, and sometimes the people that we love the most provide the most input. We should be able to grow together as a unit, and that growth sometimes happens when telling your partner what they don't want to hear. But that's how the partner gets better and things in your relationship improve. But what Milton's trying to say to you is that, like, Lydia, you've got to control your emotions sometimes in situations, because when you become an emotional person, your actions can get out of control, and that's not going to be good long term. And she, of course, gets defensive. Like, well, this is who I am. This is me. You either love all of me or you don't. I don't think he's saying he doesn't love that about you. I think he's saying, like, it's okay to take it down a notch. You think you handled the Uche situation great, but from my perspective, you're stomping off, you're walking away, you're yelling at him, you're pointing at him, you're acting irrational and emotional, and you're not allowing yourself to be better during arguments. And all he is trying to say is, I think that you could do better than this. And she's, for some reason, taking everything he's saying defensively. And all that's going to cause Milton to do is to not tell her how he feels. That's the end of the episode. I don't know how Lydia and Milton are going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think Lydia and Milton are going to get married, but I was wrong last year on everybody, so gosh. It'd be funny if nobody got married. But there's only 2 options this year, which also ticks me off. Like, the fact that they only have 2 options this year is ridiculous. It's annoying. So annoying. But thank you for stopping in. Love you guys. See you on the next one. Bye.